Good morning/afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to today's presentation on a comprehensive overview of real property interests and conveyance. We'll be diving into the different types of ownership, how legal transfers work, the limitations that can affect property, and some practical applications in property law. This will provide a solid foundation for understanding the complexities involved in real estate and property rights. Let's get started. Real property interests are essentially the legal rights or claims a person or entity holds over physical land and any structures on it. These interests aren't just about owning land. They actually define what someone can do with that property. For example, they specify whether you can possess it, use it in certain ways, or transfer your rights to someone else. This concept is fundamental in property law because it shapes the relationships between parties, outlining who has what rights and responsibilities. So, understanding real property interests helps clarify the nature of ownership and how property can be managed or shared. Let's talk about the main types of property interests you really need to understand. First, we have fee simple absolute, which is the most complete form of ownership. This means the owner has full control of the property. They can use it however they want, sell it, or transfer it during their lifetime or after they pass away. It's essentially the most powerful property right you can have. Next, there are life estates. Here, someone has ownership rights only for the duration of their life. Once that person passes away, the property automatically transfers to another designated individual. This is a way to ensure the property stays within a family or goes to a specific person without going through probate. Finally, we have leasehold interests. This grants someone the temporary right to use and occupy a property under a lease agreement. Importantly, the ownership itself remains with the landlord. So, the lessee has rights to the property for the lease term, but doesn't own it. Each of these interest types serves different needs, and understanding them is key when dealing with property rights. When we talk about ownership, it's important to understand the different types involved. First, there's legal ownership, which means holding the formal title to the property. Legal owners have the authority to sell the property or use it as collateral. Then, there's equitable ownership, which refers to having beneficial interests in the property, such as those arising from contracts or trusts. This means you might not hold a title, but you still have important rights tied to property. Now, ownership isn't just about who holds a title. It also includes specific rights. For example, rights of possession give someone physical control over the property, while rights of use allow the owner to enjoy the property and benefit from it directly. Another critical right is the right of exclusion, which lets the owner prevent others from entering or using the property without permission. Finally, it's key to remember that ownership can be divided between legal and equitable interests. Each type carries different rights and responsibilities, shaping how individuals relate to the property. Understanding these distinctions helps clarify who really owns and controls a property in various situations. When we talk about how property interests are conveyed, there are several key methods to understand. First, we have deeds, which are written documents that transfer ownership. Warranty deeds guarantee that the title is clear, providing protection to the buyer, whereas quitclaim deeds simply transfer whatever interest the grantor has, with no warranties or guarantees. Next, wills come into play by conveying property interests when someone passes away, following the instructions laid out by the decedent. This ensures the property is distributed according to their wishes. Gifts represent another way property interests can be transferred, but these happen voluntarily and without any payment or consideration in return. Finally, sales involve the exchange of property interests for money, and these transactions are typically formalized through contracts and deeds to clearly document the transfer. Each of these methods serves a distinct purpose in transferring property rights. When transferring property interests, there are several legal essentials to keep in mind. First, the transfer needs to be documented in writing. Oral agreements simply don't hold up for most real estate deals. Next, the grantor or grantors must sign this document to show they consent to the transfer. Then, the deed must be delivered and accepted, which confirms that both parties intend to complete the ownership transfer. Finally, recording the deed in public records is crucial because it notifies others of the change and safeguards the new owner's rights. Each of these steps plays an important role in making the transfer legally sound. When we talk about property rights, it's important to understand that these rights can sometimes be limited or restricted by certain factors. First, we have mortgages. A mortgage is basically a security interest that a lender holds in your property until you repay a loan. This means the lender has a legal claim on the property, which can affect your control over it. Next, there are liens. Liens occur when there are unpaid debts, and they act as claims against your property. For example, if you owe money to contractors or the government, a lien can be placed on your property to secure repayment. Easements are another limitation. An easement gives someone else the right to use your property for a specific purpose. A common example is utility companies needing access to run power lines or water pipes on your land. Lastly, we have covenants. These are agreements that place restrictions on what you can do with your property. For instance, a covenant might prevent you from building certain structures or running a business on the land. Understanding these limitations is crucial because they directly impact your rights and how you can use your property. Let's look at some real-life examples of conveyance to better understand how property rights are transferred or shared. First, we have a home sale via warranty deed. In this case, the seller guarantees that the title is clear, meaning there are no legal issues or claims against the property, and the buyer receives full ownership rights. Next, consider a life estate possession. Here, an individual has a right to live on and use the property for their lifetime. Once they pass away, the ownership rights automatically transfer to someone else, as predetermined. Lastly, lease agreements are a common form of conveyance where a tenant gains temporary possession and use of property through a leasehold interest. However, the landlord retains full ownership throughout the lease term. Each of these examples illustrates different ways property rights can be conveyed or limited in practice. Let's review the key points we've covered. First, understanding real property interests is crucial. This means knowing the different types of ownership and the specific rights each one entails. Next, conveyance procedures are fundamental. Transferring property must follow proper legal steps, including having written deeds, obtaining signatures, ensuring delivery, and recording transaction. We also talk about limitations on property rights, such as mortgages, liens, easements, and covenants, which can affect how property is used or transferred. Finally, staying aware of all these elements is essential for making informed decisions in transactions and managing property effectively. Keeping these takeaways in mind will help you navigate real estate matters confidently.